G'day and welcome to the DUC Migrating to Australia podcast. My name is Lisa Chambers, and on this episode, I'm joined with Luke Magee from Stay Rent Buy and Jess Stone, who's a DUC client who also used Stay Rent Buy to purchase a home. We're actually coming in from all over Australia. I'm coming in from South Australia. Jess is from Western Australia and Luke's coming in from Queensland. So we're literally all over Australia. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Lisa, and thank you so much for having us on the podcast again. And a very big welcome and thank you to Jess Stone for joining us today.
Hey, guys.
Hi, thanks.
So ironically, it's about a year since we last had a chat on the podcast. So probably very good timing for a bit of a summary and update on what's been happening in Australia in terms of property finance and all those fun topics.
Yeah, great. Yeah. I think this is going to be your third podcast with us, Luke.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
You're a regular guest. Let's shoot into. Do you want to give us the details of the current property market outlook, Luke, in Australia?
Yeah, absolutely. And I much of this podcast, I really would like to focus around Jess's journey and story. I think that'll tell a lot of these type of things. However, there's also, if we're able to refer people back to our original podcast from a year ago, much of the commentary in there is still relevant today. And very importantly, and with a bit of gratification, you can listen to that and see that the previous 12 months, we predicted very accurately what was going to occur. So perhaps for more detailed explanation than what I'm about to say, I'd reference people back to that first podcast. So probably the main notes to bring to people's attention that have changed since that last podcast, Lee, is Australia certainly is still in the midst of the housing crisis with a massive undersupply of housing in both the rental and home ownership space. As of today, depending where you get your stats from, because it is somewhat murky waters due to people staying with friends and family and things like this, so it's hard to get an exact number, but the figure is around about 402,000 too few homes for the people who are currently living here, and yet we've got around about 500,000 immigrants a year coming in. So again, with 500,000 houses shortage, 500,000 people coming in, it means that the supply and demand issue in housing is a massive issue, presenting challenges, but also some great opportunities. And again, Jess will give you a live example of that. Probably there's then two main things to really talk about that have had a massive impact on the property market. The first of those was that last year we had a federal election where the incumbent Labor government were voted back in. And indeed, as you well be aware, Lisa, and indeed you too, Jess, really the biggest topic being talked about during the election campaigns was immigration and housing affordability. So one of the policies that the geniuses work that are our government brought into place and has only been implemented since the 1st of October is that they've freed up the first home buyers incentives. So prior to this policy coming in, there were first home buyer grants and incentives. However, they were very restricted in terms of the value of a property that the government would support you with as a first home buyer, and also income thresholds. The government have now taken off both those thresholds, income and property purchase price thresholds. What they are now allowing people to do is buy property with a 5% deposit. They will then government back any lender to provide them a loan. And this government backing avoids people from paying a fee called lender's mortgage insurance. So very briefly, in Australia, when you borrow more than 80% of a property's value, you get charged a fee that's called mortgage insurance. And the higher loan to value ratio that you get, so from 81% compared to a 99% loan, at 99% loan, you'd pay a very, very high mortgage insurance, often upwards of $30,000, $40,000. So the government's now opened the window for all these new first home buyers to be able to buy in the market with a 5% deposit, no mortgage insurance. So what this has led to is a absolute reboot of an already booming property market in the most affordable suburbs, what we call first home buyer area. Once again, because all these people that previously hadn't been able to afford to buy there now can, it is now pushing prices up in the most affordable areas at a crazy rate of knots. So while they were trying to solve a problem to get people into the housing, the government have actually created a far bigger problem in terms of housing affordability. So again, while this may sound a little daunting for those on their way to Australia, it actually creates great opportunity that we'll discuss further in the podcast. So that's one thing to be aware of. The other really significant thing that's occurred just happened on the 21st of October, where our Prime Minister Albanese met with Donald Trump, and we've done a massive trade deal with the USA, supplying them with critical minerals and real earth commodities, predominantly lithium, nickel and cobalt, which Australia happens to have the largest holdings or resources of that in the world. So this is going to, while Australia, and particularly WA, has a massive mining industry, as I'm sure most listeners are aware, and things had just quietened down a little bit on the mining front with some issues with China. This deal with the US is going to be worth billions. It's going to bring crazy amount of jobs, particularly to WA. And again, really drive the population growth there as people come here for opportunities with the US investment. So they're probably the two main changes since we last spoke and things to be aware of. And that's talking on a national level. So do you want me to just have a little quick summary of each state, perhaps?
Yeah, go on, please.
Yeah, so bottom line is every state is experiencing this very strong immigration. And it's probably just understanding the trends. And this is something that we see firsthand working with so many wonderful people we meet via the Down Under Centre, is that pre-COVID, 90% of the people we dealt with moved to Melbourne or Sydney. Post-COVID, we've not had one client move to either of those states. Everyone's now moving to WA, Queensland or South Australia. It's been such a change in demographic. WA and Queensland in particular are real destination states, probably WA leading the charge. So with that WA, again, it really has become just so popular, particularly with the UK immigrants. And along with this now new mining deal, it presents a very unique property outlook, and it's a difficult market to navigate. However, it is a place of great opportunity to create wealth, and or for those wanting to live there and buy there. It would be highly recommended that they pre-plan things, talk to someone like us, or preferably us, to help guide them through the process. Otherwise, it can be quite daunting. And the population growth there, just to give you an idea, last year there was 14,000 new home completions in WA, yet 90,000 people moved there. So they just can't build houses quick enough to keep up with the population growth. Thankfully, we have priority access to lots of builders and developers and things. So we're able to help a lot of clients jump the queues to get access to these types of things. So WA is a big highlight state for living and for an investment point of view. The other state that I want to mention is Victoria. Because Victoria's property market has probably been a standout in the Australian property market in that it has been stagnant for really 4 or 5 years. And that is due to, again, state government policy during COVID that I won't bore everyone with the details of right now. However, it drove a lot of Victorians to move interstate themselves. However, simultaneously, what we've seen is massive immigration to Victoria largely from the Chinese and Indian communities. In fact, to help better understand that, of the calendar year 22-23, Victoria's population grew by 175,000, which is a 2.6% increase in the population. So that's a net figure after lots of Victorians moved out. There was still a surplus of 175,000 people. Now, importantly, that is the largest population growth of any state or territory in Australian history. So just digest that for a moment. The highest growth in Australia's history for any state or territory. Yet the property market there has not moved. So we identify Victoria as at the absolute bottom of a property cycle. It's terribly undervalued, and it's a good place to be moving to live if that's where people are headed. But in particular, if you're looking to create wealth, it's a really great place to be investing at the moment. Sydney's just so expensive that we really literally don't get clients wanting to purchase there for that reason. We get a heap of people moving to Queensland. Similar here, a story here where I'm talking to you from is similar to WA, where it's just extremely hard to get your hands on land. And all existing dwellings are highly competed for. There'll be 100 people at an auction and so forth. So again, and walking through that process of buying in these competitive markets, we really encourage people to talk to us well before they plan on actually purchasing, get their finance in order, and let us make sure that you understand the processes. And indeed, we can often help with the negotiations, things like that. And the other state is your beautiful state, Lisa, which, hasn't that been a story over the last two or 3 years?
Yeah.
Probably you can comment on that better than I can, living there firsthand. But it's again becoming very much a destination state, and the market there is also booming. But is that an accurate description from what you're seeing on the ground there?
Yeah, for sure. There's houses spring up everywhere at the moment, Luke, but there's not enough houses either at the same time.
Yeah, they can't. There's one of the problems in South Australia, and I'll just talk very briefly about this, is they just can't develop the land quick enough to build new houses on. And unfortunately, one of that was due to the government not planning for this massive growth that's occurred. And many of the land development sites are being held up due to the government not having connecting water services there and sewerage, which is probably another 12-month problem before that even starts to sort out. So probably a little bit detail that was a bit unnecessary, but just so you understand why that's happening.
Yeah. Cool. So how about interest rates? We've had a couple of rate cuts recently. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, look, great call, because whenever we talk to anyone coming from the UK, depending how close or eye they're keeping on things in Australia, it can be a bit of a shock to them, because the UK is coming out of a extraordinarily low interest rate market cycle. We've in fact got, I'm talking to a client at the moment who's got a 10-year fixed rate at 2% on his loan in the UK. Whereas in Australia, interest rates now, we're depending whether you're owner, occupier or investor, are about, say, 5.6, 5.7 up to 6.7%. Now, that in Australia we're in a decreasing interest rate environment, and it is currently a what I would refer to relatively low interest rate period, but where purchasing property for owner, occupier or investor is very affordable. Now, if you listen to our last podcast, I had very strong opinions about interest rates then, as I do now. And that is, so the Reserve Bank have just had their most recent meeting, and they did not put interest rates down again, which I believe they should have. We've had 3 consecutive rate drops. The reason they did not put the rates down again is because the inflation figures were up. Now, very coincidentally, I talked earlier about this new government-backed home scheme, helping home buyers get into the property market. Well, what do you think that did to property prices? It pushed them through.
Yeah.
So this inflation that has led the government to their reason not to bring interest rate down it's a false inflation. It was caused by the government and housing prices. When we break down the real cost of living, while there are some inflationary items, there's no way known rates shouldn't have come down. And I'm firmly of the opinion that over the next 12 months, we'll see rates come down by at least another 0.5%, if not more. And look, at the moment, you'll see it, every bank economist has a different opinion on it. The Reserve Bank tells their story. I frankly firmly believe that what I'm telling you here is the best and most accurate information that you'll get. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, and of course, when interest rates come down, it gives people more buying power, which pushes prices up as well, doesn't it?
You've absolutely hit the nail on the head. And again, this is where we get back into, and again, I'm very eager to just join the conversation here because she's lived it and seen it very much firsthand. As these rate drops do occur, people's borrowing capacities improve. That means more investors can afford to get into the market, which they're doing in droves. And also, again, particularly at that lower first home buyer market, where the biggest problem is, that's where most people will need to try and afford to get in. However, that's also where the highest inflation or capital growth is occurring. Because of a small interest rate drop, like you talked about, Lisa, means that lower income earners are all of a sudden, hey, now we can get into the market. So
Yeah.
very astute question and comment by you, Lisa. Thank you.
Cool. So do you want to give us a quick overview of the services that Stay Rent Buy offers and how you can help our DUC clients, please?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. So, look, we work in a very, very niche market. As you'd be aware, Lisa and Jess, but a lot of the audience wouldn't be. I've moved countries twice myself, including having lived in the UK for 5 years. And that's indeed was the reason why we founded this business, because we live the experience of the journey that each of you, the listeners, will be on. So we set this business up to help people through that process. We're not here selling houses. We're here providing solutions and scenarios to help people transfer their wealth from the UK successfully, which is by far the biggest mistake people moving from the UK make. So we encourage people to talk to us as far out from their move as possible to plan that right. Otherwise, it can be an extraordinarily costly exercise, particularly while the Australian property market is going up like it is and will for the foreseeable future. The other side of the business that we are very heavily involved with is finance. So we can help clients who are currently in the UK using a UK income purchase property here, and or for those who first arrive here, purchase property. It is a very, very niche market for depending on the visa types, and if you've got income coming from the UK or you only had a short-term employment here, the banks look at such clients in very stringent ways. And being very frank, there's no finance broking company in Australia who knows this space better than we do. We've got a number of lenders on our panels that no other brokers have who work specifically in this space. So we're really just here to help people. It's such an epic move that moved from the UK to Australia. And our goal is to make sure that their financial side of it, which is so largely ignored as people get so busy with their visas and organising the move and jobs, etc., that so many people do neglect what is the most important aspect of the move, which is their finances. They don't seek advice on it, arrive here, and all of a sudden they've lost a significant amount of wealth doing so. So it's us trying to help people on that financial journey. Having said that, and as a topic or two might come up with Jess, we really just help with anything we can with any of the areas of expertise. We've got lots of relationships with good accountants, things like that we can introduce people to. Basically, just help people on that journey in any way we can.
Brilliant, cool. So you've got a new focus, which is owner-occupied builds. Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, great. Thank you for bringing that up. And this is a new initiative that we've introduced initially in WA, because that's where we're getting an awful lot of clients wanting to buy an owner-occupied home that's a house and land package. Now, when you buy an owner-occupied home as a house and land package, if you went to a builder and wanted what we refer to as a custom-built home, all of a sudden you're getting architects, town planners involved, literally straight away at $100,000 to the construction of your house. So we've been proud to announce Tom Wyatt as a new member of our team. He also is from the UK, and his family are 3 generations of builders. So he now provides a service for our owner-occupied clients in WA that's essentially a custom home build at no cost. And we then, he draws up the house designs that we then take to the most suitable and best builders to help build that house. And we're about to roll out a similar model right up the East Coast. But it's WA where we've now been 6 months down the track and having some tremendous wins with that. It's been that had not been a focus of our business previously, but now we are getting so many clients wanting to build their own owner-occupied homes that this has been a tremendous addition to our business.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks, Luke. We'll bring Jess on for a little bit by herself, and then I think we'll get you back on, and then you and Jess can talk together.
Yeah, sorry for talking so long.
No, that's okay. That's fine. Don't worry. It's okay. It's all really good information, Luke, and you guys do help our customers an awful lot with your valuable information, so thank you. Jess, thanks again for joining us today.
No problem at all, Lisa. Glad to be here.
Cool. I think we'll just spend a few minutes talking about your journey, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you want to give us a little bit of background about when you started to consider the move to Australia?
Yeah, so the journey for us started, and I think a lot of people listening will probably resonate with this, but it started during COVID lockdown and coming out of the lockdown. And I think collectively, myself, my wife, but also our wider family, all felt that there was a change probably was needed. I think we had a lot of time to reflect during the lockdown, and we came out of it thinking, I wonder if there's something a bit more out there that we could be striving for. And that's probably where the idea really started to be bounced about. And I think mostly driven by wanting to make a bit of a change to our everyday life. So, it's easy to think moving to Australia, being on holiday all the time, things like that, it's not quite the reality of it. But what we were hoping for, and I think what we would all collectively as a family agree, what we have achieved is we've just been able to elevate our everyday and make our everyday life that bit better than it was in the UK. So that's kind of why and when we started thinking about it.
Yeah. And is that what appealed to you about life in Australia, to be able to elevate your lifestyle?
Yeah, I'd say that, and we were, and I probably speak for most of the family when I say we felt that we were living sort of for our 4 or 5 weeks of annual leave a year, and the rest of life became quite mundane. So moving to Oz has been a big opportunity for us to, make more of the evenings, make more of the weekends, being in such a lovely environment. I mean, I don't, seeing as we're from all over Australia, I won't start the argument as to who's got the best beaches, but WA certainly has some gorgeous coastline, which we make the most of on a weekly basis, which, is incredible. And I'd say one of the big ones for me, and I am British, and I'm sure a lot of people agree, it's the weather. Very simple one. I was just sick of the rain. So, yes, lovely sunny WA has worked wonders for us on that front.
Brilliant. How did you first come across Stay Rent Buy, and why did you reach out to them?
Funnily enough, the first introduction we had to Stay Rent Buy was through this very podcast. So it's very nice to be here today chatting with you guys because it's a full circle moment for me. It must have been, I was just trying to piece the dates together. It must have been the first podcast that Luke did that I listened to.
It was indeed, Jess, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I was a DUC client, as was the rest of the family. So we used you guys for our visas and also for our home search. And I'm one of those people who has to have everything all figured out before I start something, which is a bit of a flaw when trying to move country because there's a lot to think about. But as a result of that, I spent a lot of time listening to the podcasts, all different topics, trying to learn as much as possible, understand the system. And that's when I came across Luke's first podcast. And yeah, it was enlightening for me, put it that way. I like to understand how the system works in terms of the financial system, the differences between the UK and the Australian system, and I was starting from a point of knowing nothing. And what really came across in the first podcast that I listened to was how passionate Luke was about it, how knowledgeable Luke was about the systems and the differences, and also how we can play those differences to our advantage. And I'm sure that's something we can come on to. So yeah, it presented to me as what was initially a very nerve-wracking part of the process. To Luke's earlier point, the financial side of things is, if we're honest with ourselves, probably one of the most significant and most important parts of the process. But to me, it felt very daunting in the first instance because there was so much I didn't know. But coming across the podcast, listening to Luke, it made me kind of shift my mindset a bit and think, okay, no, maybe this isn't something to be feared, but maybe this is an opportunity for us to set ourselves up financially for the future.
Good. So just take us through how Stay Rent Buy actually assisted you.
So I will say at this point, Lisa, there's probably not a lot in the finance investment space that Stay Rent Buy haven't assisted us with at this point. Pretty much anything. I'm on the phone to Luke, or I'm shooting him an email just to understand. But at a very top level, Stay Rent Buy helped us develop an investment strategy that works for us. And I do want to highlight this and really make everybody aware of the tailored solutions that Luke, Camille, and the whole Stay Rent Buy team provide, because it's certainly not a one size fits all solution. So Luke took the time to get to know both myself and my wife, what's important for us from a lifestyle point of view and what we want out of life, and then built a investment strategy that would help us reach those goals. And I think that's something throughout our whole process and all of the time working with Stay Rent Buy that really is the thing that we value most, is how tailored and personal the solutions are. So what that looked like for us was we had a property in the UK which we had sold in preparation for the move. And we were sat with all of our funds in a bank account, which felt nerve-wracking because the property prices were climbing in the UK, the property prices were climbing in Australia, and whilst we might have been making a little bit of interest on the cash in the bank, it was that wealth was being eroded away the longer we sat on it. So we needed a plan to get that money invested, and that's where Luke and the team came up with the idea of an investment portfolio. Now, I will point out that was not what I had in mind when I first started talking to Luke and engaged with Stay Rent Buy. I was very much of the opinion that we would, or rather of the hope that we would use our funds to buy property in Australia to live in, and that would kind of be a replica of what we had in the UK, buying a house, working, paying off that mortgage, and that being that. But Luke convinced me that there might be some better opportunities for us to create wealth, and I'm sure we'll come on to what that looks like. But what that meant for us is building a investment portfolio. So we're now on our third house and land package as investment properties, and that's in the space of, it's been quite a journey in the space of the 18 months since we've been here. So quite a different setup to what we had in the UK, but it presented such a brilliant opportunity for us to create wealth at a time where we could have otherwise been at risk of missing out and of losing wealth during that transfer process.
Thanks so much for all your kind words there, Jess. And if you don't mind, I might just talk about the strategy that we used for yourself, Jess, because I think
for sure,
resonates with a lot of clients. And again, appreciate you explaining that, what we do is very, very tailored. We never see two situations that are the same. So we come up with all sorts of different plans to accommodate and facilitate the most effective way for you to transfer your wealth to Australia. And that's when I first met Jess and her lovely wife, Alex. And we had many, many Zooms while they were in the UK talking about things and getting comfortable with what their financial future would look like. As Jess mentioned, she had significant savings sitting in a bank account, essentially earning her nothing. And when I first met her, it was probably, I don't know, just maybe 6 months before you moved out here.
Yeah, something like that, Luke. Yeah.
So they had money sitting in the bank. They weren't moving out here for 6 months. Once they then got here, to be able to qualify for a loan, they'd need to realistically be in a job for between 3 to 6 months. So that means that we were looking at least a year where her savings would be sitting in a bank account earning maybe 3%. You're taxed on that. So really you're earning nothing on that money. Yet the Perth property market where she's wanting to buy into was going up well over 20% per annum. So what we suggested for Jess and Alex was to secure a block of land as a house and land package, however, where the land was not actually ready to be built on yet. So the land developer hadn't developed yet. They were selling essentially off a master plan that then took them up to 8 months to develop the land before Jess and Alex were able to take possession of it. And that's what we call land titling dates. So with Jess and Alex, we for an all-up outlay of about $30,000, they were able to secure a block of land at a place called Two Rocks in Perth. And that they literally paid the deposits, that got them the block of land, and then there was nothing else to do until they arrived here. Once they both had their jobs, we then went ahead and got a loan here in Australia using their new Australian income, and we then settled on that block of land. Now, that block of land alone in that time, I think we had, Jess, can you recall? I think when we got it valued, it had gone up about $60,000.
It was 60, yeah.
So we made $60,000 just on the land value alone in about 7 or 8 months. Now that house is now nearly built, and there's about 100,000. Jess has made about $100,000 from that purchase. So that's a year down the track. So she's made $100,000 profit, whereas had her money been sitting in a bank account, she literally would have that money would have devalued by that same amount. So essentially, she'd be $200,000 worse off had she not followed this advice. So again, it was, and totally understanding that Jess and Alex's aim, our aim might be then once this happened, let's reassess their situation. And if they wanted to, they would have been able to sell that investment and then buy their own home. However, having seen how effective this investment strategy is, we continued down that path.
I'm hooked now, Luke. You've got me hooked on this strategy.
It's good fun and it works.
I must admit, I'm actually sat here thinking, okay.
Yeah, no, and look, it really is that. And look, it's not for everyone. We totally understand. Some people want to have their own occupied homes, and that's our aim. We just try and help people ensure that in this massive move, the epic journey they have, that when they get here, they're going to have the financial freedom to make it the epic journey it deserves to be.
Is it a bit like rentvesting?
It's exactly rentvesting.
Yeah,
and this is what my wife and I personally do, as Jess is well aware. I've never owned a home I live in, and I rent where I live. The reason for that is in Australia, any debt on an investment property is tax deductible, as is any expense related to maintaining that investment. Whereas when you buy your own home, that's not tax deductible debt. So it's in my mind, I call that dead money. And indeed, when you buy an investment property, as Jess has, after the tenant's paid the rent and she claims her tax deductions, she literally won't need to pay any money towards the mortgage. In fact, it will return a positive income for her. So she's got these now. We'll have 3 investment properties that are going to cost her nothing. She'll be saving probably $40,000 or $50,000 a year in tax, and have these assets that are appreciating in value. Now, what that then means is a whole lot of cash flows then freed up for her to be able to live and rent in a really nice house. And indeed, Jess has just moved into a new rental property, an upgrade from their initial home. And just one important thing to understand on that is, in Australia, the higher a property value is worth, the lower rental return you get on it. So using a high example, if there was a house worth $5 million, the owner of that property might get a rental return of about 2.2%. Whereas if you had a property worth $850,000, your rental return would be around 5%. So what that means is, let's talk about the $5 million house. If I wanted to rent that, that costs me 2% of the property's value in rent each year. If I was to buy that property, I'd need to take out a mortgage, currently at about, let's say, 7%, to own that same property. So do I want to pay 2% to live in that property, or 7% to live in that property? It's a little bit of a different way of looking at things, but given my financial planning background and from a wealth creation point of view, it is undoubtedly the most effective way to run your finances. Once again, having said that, we totally understand that it's not for everyone, and we're in the middle of helping a whole bunch of people purchase their own occupied homes. So, yeah, excuse me going into a bit of a deep dive about that, but I did just want to explain that strategy we used to Jess, because as we'll see in a minute, there's been some other strategies we've used with other members of her family.
That's really good strategy. I guess that's really helped with your financial security, Jess, with moving to a new country as well.
Oh, massively so, Lisa. Yeah, and just touching on what Luke said there, that's it's certainly a different mindset to what I had grown up with in the UK. So I was probably more of the traditional financial mindset of, you get a good job, you use your post-tax salary to pay off the mortgage on the house you own, and hopefully by the time you retire, you've paid that mortgage off and life's good. So that's the mentality that I first had when I engaged with Luke, and Luke will back me up when I say that I'm a very risk-averse person. So I appreciate that listening to this, it might sound a little bit out there perhaps, and something that feels a bit alien, especially in the midst of moving countries as well. It's yet another thing to consider and thing to think about, but actually it's been a huge opportunity for us. So yeah, in terms of our financial outlook, from where we were in the UK to where we are now, Luke's strategies have already worked wonders for us. I think in the 18 months since we have been here, we've made more, we've grown our wealth more than we did in 6 years on the property market in the UK. So just to put that into perspective, it has massively changed our outlook.
Yes, amazing.
Just one comment there, which Jess, and indeed one of the reasons I asked her if she wouldn't mind joining us on this podcast is, as you can probably tell, Jess is a very astute young woman, and she is very, very thorough. And this is a really important part of the journey, moving from the UK, is because things are so different in the UK in terms of obtaining loan property. All the rules are totally different in the UK to Australia. So it was really an important part of the process, and it is ongoing to educate and make sure that anyone that goes through this, we educate them as much as we can and upskill them so they end up really totally being experts in this space, which I would now very much refer to Jess as that. She's got an astute knowledge now of how property investing and wealth creation can work in Australia, and also the joys of dealing with lenders here in Australia.
Is it much different?
Thank you for your kind words there, Jess. That's greatly appreciated.
I'm just going to say, because the podcast, normally we keep it to about, where we are now. So this episode is going to go on for a bit longer, just to the listeners. So what I'll do, I'm going to ask some questions to Jess, and if Luke wants to chime in as well, that's cool. I was just going to go on to one. So do you find dealing with the finance process here in Australia much different to what it was in the UK, Jess?
Yes, in short, Lisa, yes. But I'm going to be very, very honest here and saying this is unlike me, because I, as Luke and his team know, I like to be very involved with everything. But I have been extremely hands off with this process in terms of the finance process, and that really is a testament to the hard work and care that Luke and his team put into this. So I have handed over all control of arranging our finances, certainly in terms of the home loans, etc., over to Luke's team, and they have handled all of this for us. One of the key things I think we have noticed, though, is processes are a little bit more manual here, and I think that extends across all of Australian life, potentially. And I can't compare, as I wasn't in the property market 10 years ago in the UK, but it does feel like there's a bit of a lag between the lending situation in the UK versus Australia, and it being a little bit more old school here, a few more trips into branch to sign forms and that kind of thing. But Luke's team make this incredibly straightforward for us, so that is exactly what we needed during that move process.
Thanks, Jess, and that is, and particularly again, for someone in your situation, and we thank you so much for the trust you do put in us for that side of things, because it, particularly when we're building a property portfolio like we are with Jess, getting your finance structures right is key. It's more important than the interest rates you get. The use of things that a lot of UK people aren't familiar with, such as a mortgage offset account.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, is something that's a massive benefit financial tool. And again, just making sure the loan structures are correct. So again, this is a niche based, and I won't go into too much detail about it, other than saying that it's certainly an area of our expertise.
Definitely. So, Jess, what's one thing that you've learned that you think every UK expat should know before buying here?
I think for me, and certainly the biggest learning curve that I've experienced, and this plays more into the investment space, so buying for investment purposes, and that is the ability to tax offset. Luke touched upon it earlier, but that really is a key mechanism that Alex and I have been able to use to make our investments affordable. So in the UK, we would have been able to stretch ourselves towards an investment property, but realistically, from a financial standpoint, certainly in a short-term cash flow sense, it would have been very costly for us to do so because of the tax structure in the UK. Whereas there is opportunity here in Australia with the tax structure, and as Luke said, allowing you to offset those, as we term them, losses from your investment portfolio, from your taxable income, i.e. your salary. It provides a huge opportunity to make tax savings, and similar to in the UK, tax in Australia is pretty high. Both Alex and myself work full time, so our tax bills are quite hefty. But the ability to tap into that tax and use those tax offsets to then generate money or save money, should I say, that we can then be investing, is a brilliant opportunity that I had no idea about. Having grown up in the UK and only lived in the UK, I had no idea that a different structure existed such as this. And that's probably one of the mechanisms that's given us the most opportunity here in Oz.
Yeah, it's one of the big benefits of talking to a company that can give you these useful insights and the knowledge, because obviously it is different here to in the UK, and it takes a long time to learn how things work. I mean, I've been here for 6 years and I still find new things sometimes. And like you, I definitely noticed that things can be a bit more old school here, Jess, as well.
For better and for worse though, Lisa, that I'd say, for better and for worse.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Phone, which is nice, yeah.
It works both ways, yeah.
Most of our finance team do have a nervous twitch, by the way.
Cool. So, Jess, if you had to sum up your experience with Stay Rent Buy in one sentence, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would genuinely say financially life-changing. The journey has given myself and Alex an opportunity to reach our goal of becoming financially free and be able to retire early, certainly earlier than we would have been able to in the UK. And so, yeah, this journey with Luke and the whole Stay Rent Buy team has given us a life-changing opportunity to do that and to really make the most of this move to Australia. So that will be it for me.
Brilliant.
That's
Sounds
lovely.
good.
Thank you so much for the kind words, Jess.
Cool. So, Luke, for anyone listening from the UK or just settling into Australia, how can people get in touch with you?
Look, that's very easy. Excuse me. Obviously, being such close partners with you, where of course can be found on your website, or indeed our website, stayrentbuy.com.au.
Yeah.
You reach out to us via there, and one of us, our consultants, will certainly be in touch promptly.
Yeah.
If I may, there's just one thing that I did want to jump back and talk about just briefly and understand where the time limit.
That's fine. Yep.
Jess was kind enough to introduce some of her family members to us, being her mum and her mum's partner, and then also her sister and her sister's husband, who we've also both now done business with. And I just wanted to bring that up because the strategies we employed in all three scenarios were very different. We've talked about what we did for Jess. I'll just briefly talk about what we did for her parent, or her mum and her mum's partner, Caroline and Rob. So what we did with Caroline and Rob is they had significant holdings in the UK. It was going to be a while until they moved out here. The UK market was very flat while the Australian property market was booming. So we again suggested, hey, get a foot in the property market while you can and you're still in the UK. So we used their UK income to purchase a house and land property here in Australia, where unlike Jess's, where the land title was 8 months away for when they arrive, with Rob and Caroline, we wanted land that was ready to go now, so we could obtain that loan for them and get their house built or construction started while they were still in the UK. So that's what we did with them, and Rob and Caroline have now they've purchased 2 investments off us, and they've made about $180,000 over the same space of time that Jess and Alex have. And we then had the privilege of working with Alex and Amy Morris, which that's Jess's sister and her husband. Now, we only met them about a month before they arrived out here, and that somewhat therefore limits us on the advice and options available. So we ended up agreeing that it was best to wait till they arrive, have some employment set up here, and then they wanted to purchase their own home. So we went ahead with that and very much coached them through that purchase process, albeit, and Jess, you might recall this better than I, but they had originally, when they first got there, approached another finance broker.
Correct, yeah.
And I think the finance broker there was only telling them they could only borrow about $600,000 from memory.
Yeah, it was significantly less than what you managed to come up with, Luke.
Yeah, so they came to us very disheartened, and but again, this is where understanding this lending space makes the world of difference on what we'll be able to do for you. So we were able to end up getting them a loan for well over $1 million, and they've purchased a beautiful home in one of the northern suburbs of Perth. The important note here is that buying particularly an existing home here in Australia, there are lots and lots of little nuances very different to the UK, and that people need to understand. And if you engage with us, on any level, we'll absolutely coach you through that buying process to make sure no mistakes are made. And Alex and Amy certainly gave me the authority to talk about this following point, is that in their buying process, we set out things very clearly for them. We're involved in negotiating with the real estate agent with them, being frank, a very unethical real estate agent. And we'd mapped out very clearly for Alex and Amy processes to follow. One of those was to get a building and pest inspection done that was very independent, third party from the owner or the real estate agency. Now, this purchase was done rapidly, and there was a lot of pressure on timing of things. And somehow the real estate agent substituted the company that we suggested to get the building and pest inspection done, and they issued one via a company that they manipulated, frankly. Unfortunately, then after settlement of the property, there were significant problems with the property, and it was a very costly error that was just one moment in time that an email missed where they fell outside our process that ended up costing them a lot of money. And albeit we certainly kicked up a big fuss and put up a fight against that real estate agent on their behalf, it is, again, just these small little things that if you let us guide you through it, you won't make any mistakes. And we can certainly just help, again, with a totally different strategy. These people have just bought an owner-occupied existing home. So while what we've talked about is, from different types of investing, we're also, for anyone here already in the UK, in Oz, who might be renting, come and talk to us. Let us help you get into the property market. Let us get you off that rental, off the rental market, and either into your own home or rentvesting like Jess is. So, sorry, that was probably just a little bit of a last summary. Just wanted to explain that, Jess, I guess, did have a good experience and was confident to refer us to her family.
Absolutely.
Yeah, who I must say, have very much become, not just clients but friends, as does tend to happen when you go on such a journey together.
We're still waiting for you to come over to WA for a family reunion, Luke.
We've actually, this should be off the podcast, but it could be within the next 2-3 weeks finally. So
there we are then, official.
Yeah, so we're really looking forward to meeting you all and shaking hands. So that's probably enough of my waffle, Lisa. Everyone's probably sick to death of the sound of my voice. A massive, massive thank you for Jess for joining the podcast, for coming on this journey with us, and by far, and you know this so well with me personally, Jess, you see the true enjoyment and satisfaction I get about giving you the good news of the results of your investments. It's by far the most rewarding aspect of my job. So thanks for putting your trust in us, and we're so glad for the results we've got for you.
We're glad to, and thanks to you guys, Luke.
Thanks to Luke and Jess for joining us. The link to the webpage on the Relocation Hub is in the description if you want to find out more about Stay Rent Buy and get in touch. Also, if you're coming through the Down Under Centre for your relocation call or your home search service, you can tick the box on the form to get help buying a property or home loans, and then we'll do an introduction for you over to the guys at Stay Rent Buy as well. Thanks so much again, and thanks for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Thanks for having us, Lisa.